more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Good evening, you're with GB News. In a moment, headliners. But first, let's bring you the latest news headlines. And tomorrow, the Chancellor will announce his spring budget with full coverage right here on GB News. And he's pledging to tackle labour shortages and get people back into work. It's all part of his new plan for economic growth for the UK. He's expected to promise a plan that will remove the obstacles that stop businesses investing. Jeremy Hunt's expected to announce a boost to the tax-free allowance for pensions to stop over 55s from taking early retirement. That, as well as announcing parents on universal credit receiving childcare funding up front instead of having to claim it back. He's also expected to unveil a multi-billion-pound funding package for the expansion of free childcare that would provide 30 hours a week to parents of children under 2 years old. Well, our other main story on GB News today, a woman's been sentenced to 8.5 years in prison for perverting the course of justice after falsely accusing a number of men of rape. 22-year-old Eleanor Williams had also created a Facebook post alleging she'd been a victim of an Asian grooming gang. Preston Crown Court heard how 3 of the men she'd falsely accused of rape had attempted to take their own lives. And at the time of her accusations, there were mass protests in her hometown of Barrow-in-Furness in Cumbria, with some businesses forced to close. Williams will serve half the sentence in prison. The US State Department has tonight summoned the Russian ambassador over a collision of a Russian fighter jet with a US Reaper drone over international waters. The US military says the drone was on a routine surveillance mission in international airspace when 2 Russian jets tried to intercept it over the Black Sea. According to the US military, the incident resulted in the complete loss of the US drone. The White House has said the incident was unsafe unprofessional and reckless. The controversial social media personality Andrew Tate has had his bail request denied by a court in Romania. Tate and his brother Tristan are being held over alleged sex trafficking in the country, which is under criminal investigation. It now means he'll remain in custody until at least March the 29th. The pair were taken into custody in December and haven't yet been formally charged. And lastly, the Queen Consort met a young ballet dancer today, and he's set to star in a new Disney documentary. Camilla met Anthony Mardu when she visited Elmhurst Ballet School in Birmingham. The 13-year-old Nigerian had received a scholarship from the school after a video of him pirouetting in the rain went viral in 2020. Well, Disney is now making a documentary all about him, and the Queen Consort wished him very good luck. On TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News, the People's Channel. Time for headliners.
Hello, welcome to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans, and your first and most entertaining look at Wednesday's newspapers is here. Joining me for tonight, we're blessed to have two of the top comedians in the country, Scott Capurro and Roger Monkhouse. So before we get into the front pages, gentlemen, you've both been sifting through the papers for the last few hours. Anything in particular jump out at you, Scott?
Oh, I'd read that Rishi Sunak was a Coke addict, and he had brought some Coke back from Mexico City with him, but it turns out it was Coca-Cola that he's addicted to. That he became addicted to while studying at Stanford. He loves it, and he thinks that the Mexican Coca-Cola is better because it's cane sugar and not corn syrup.
That's interesting, because I was reading a fictionalised biography of Thomas Mann, the German novelist, today. And his mother, who was Brazilian, used to emphasise to them that they should only eat foodstuffs that were sweetened with Brazilian sugar.
Yes.
So, you know, it's a similar thing, isn't it?
And I'd heard that about Coke before, but I thought when he said he brought Coke back, I thought, well, that's how he stays so skinny is he snorts a bit between meetings.
Yeah, no, it's not that. It's a funny thing with world leaders and Coca-Cola. There's Donald Trump as well, something they could probably connect with when he wins again in 2024.
A lot of caffeine in it, to keep them awake.
Yeah, absolutely.
Corn syrup has ruined a lot of confections, hasn't it?
Yeah,
it's completely destroyed everything produced by Cadbury's.
I do like maple syrup. I mean, it's a bit of
yes.
But my goodness, the taste in that, there's a richness to it. You feel like it feels like it's proper food at the same time.
Well,
there is a diet, isn't there, that some of the models do, where they take that and
cayenne pepper and lemon juice. Yeah,
you could
that
do that
can't be healthy, though, can it?
Makes you so skinny in about 3 weeks.
What have you sifted out, Roger? You had a...
Oh, the story I liked was that of Rishi Sunak's family, who were apparently spoken to by a policeman in on the edge of the Serpentine in Hyde Park. No, not Coke-related, not even in error.
No.
Because apparently their 2-year-old dog was off a lead. And I feel slightly sorry for him, because it feels like every time he's filmed doing something normal, he gets it wrong.
What, like doing a TikTok without his seatbelt on?
Exactly, exactly. He's been fined for that, and he's in trouble with this.
Well, you've got to be careful with dogs off leads. They're large bodies of water, haven't you? Because in they go, in you go after them, and tragic consequences ensue.
All the wildfowl as well on Serpentine. I
Yeah.
mean, that genuinely is a stupid thing to do, but of course he's used to walking his dog, presumably in his own massive acreage.
Richmond Deer Park probably goes chasing it with Felton!
I just think he's accustomed to breaking rules. I mean, he illegally imports Coca-Cola. He lets his dog run wild. I think it's just he lives in a different world.
It's an aristocracy. Let's have a look at Wednesday's front pages. Neither of those stories will appear, I suspect. The Daily Mail kick off with free preschool childcare in back-to-work budget. And why is Lineker lionised while Fiona Bruce is hung out to dry? Very interesting, if not entirely coherent question. The Guardian hunts $4 billion childcare bid to get parents back to work, and the King knighting a member of Queen there, which is amused the picture editor. The Telegraph hunt faces revolt over tax rise in budget. The Times, more free childcare to get parents back in jobs. It's becoming clear which is the big story. The Metro, however, have gone with Russian jet downs US drone Sounds like asymmetrical warfare, they call that. The Daily Star, Bear Grylls, let's eat more nuts. Bear for him, but not for us. OK, those are the front pages. So let us kick off with the front page of The Guardian. Scott?
Well, Hunt's $4 billion £4 billion childcare bid to get
They're
parents
pretty
back
much one-to-one.
They are pretty much.
Anyway.
He wants people back at work and not looking after the kids. So he's going to offer some 30 hours a week to parents for 1 and 2 year olds.
Right.
To look at, so it's called. There's a term for it, but it's back-to-back childcare. So your kids.
Dystopia.
Yeah, there's that. So they're looked after.
Children removed from their parents at birth.
But what
NHS will have those. Thank you very much.
What happens? I wonder what happened where they're 3 years old. I think they send them off to work at that point, which does sound great. And I think we all like free kids. I want my kids for free too.
Yeah.
It's too expensive. So.
Well, I mean, I suppose sharing the burden, spreading the cost and the difficulty and the disruption of early parenthood. We are, of course, as a nation, not replacing ourselves at the moment, so this is an incentive to encourage people to have children.
It's costing
more.
more.
On the other hand, it's quite a big lump, isn't it, out of their...
4 billion. It's a lot.
No, I don't mind the money. It's like
it
quite
sounds
a
like
large,
you do.
When they're that young, is it? I don't know. Putting pressure on mothers to go back to work when
Very
they
much
might
so.
not want to.
Well, the workforce is depleted. Evidently, they want, especially professional mothers, to go back to work and to reinforce the workforce. And basically, there's not enough labour. And in theory, that $4 billion will pay for itself.
Again and again and again. Also, 1 year olds
definitely should do. Yeah.
1 year olds are cute, but 2 year olds, when they can start talking.
Oh, nobody's claiming it's fun to stay at home with kids, but I do think it's possibly an important part of becoming. I don't know. It's just,
I don't know at what point they benefit from socialisation, I have to say. And at one, that seems quite early, but then I'm quite old-fashioned at that.
Well, you'll be at home with them, just 30 hours a week you won't be.
We had I suppose it depends if you get how many different options you have as well, whether you're kind of assigned one the way that you are with school.
A child,
you're told where you're the care option, you know. We were quite lucky, we were quite middle class, I suppose, but we had a nanny. There's no better word for it, although I do think that sounds a bit sort of Victorian or Peter Pan or whatever. We had a nanny who had 2 children, ours and one other, from the age of about 6 months. And that was really nice, you know, and I think if I had a voucher that I could spend towards that rather than them just going off towards some sort of facility where they're put into a filing cabinet for 8 hours a day.
My children went to nurseries and I think they were stimulated and benefited from childcare.
From what age though? From 6 months?
Or from about 18 months,
Yeah, see, from 18 months, that's
Slightly
fine.
later.
They're talking about the first 2 years.
And only a few hours a week as well.
They're talking
less
first
than
9 months to 2 years.
Yeah.
Is what they're talking. I slept in a drawer. I turned out okay.
You slept in a drawer.
But it says that millions of people...
did not turn out okay.
It said The Guardian, that millions of people are still grappling with the cost of living, including middle-class people, are really struggling with looking after their kids while they work. So it's affecting people from all financial backgrounds.
Childcare costs make it impossible to go out to work.
What have you got, Roger? What's your front page?
Oh, my front page is the... let me see. Oh, it's the Telegraph, which is all about the budget, of course. Once again, supposedly Hunt is facing a revolt from backbenchers who are unhappy about the hike in business tax charges, up from 19 to 25%, which is indeed massive. And whilst he's giving away $4 billion potentially with the childcare offer, it's a massive imposition upon small businesses, particularly, to face a corporation tax hike of such proportions. I mean, it's been coming a long time, so I doubt really whether there will be a backbench revolt, but I can understand the concern, not least because didn't Jeremy Hunt campaign against the hike in corporation tax a long time ago when they were having elections? When
he was, trying to become leader?
Yes.
Yeah, very possibly. Well, they have short memories, don't they?
They do indeed have short memories.
I mean, my only hope, and it is, a fervent hope, is that there are gnarly taxes coming in now in time for them to be removed in the build-up to the next general election, which is likely to be May 24, right? So we may be looking at a year of pain. and then they can whip them away again, and we can float up like a cork to the surface.
Does this mean our comedy club's going to close, though? Is that going to affect the places that we perform at?
All sorts of businesses are really struggling because they've got payback loans still to deal with, and then with an imposition of corporation tax as well. This is, I mean, it looks an awful lot like a Rachel Reeves budget, doesn't it? It's very hard to discern any clear blue water.
As it was in 2019, just before the pandemic created a mess of everything. But Sunak's budget, after the Red Wall votes had shored up the government, that was considered to be borderline socialist.
Yeah.
You know, as well. It is quite hard to find people to vote for if you want to have a low tax, high efficiency
they don't exist
economy
anymore.
now. No.
It's
How about the front page of the Times, Scott? What do you got on there?
I can't remember. Let me look. On the front page of the Times, the migration bill risks adding trauma to child refugees. There's some deep concern by Rachel D'Souza, who is the child care commissioner for England, and she wants to have an urgent meeting with Suella Braverman about what Braverman means when she says things like, in what circumstances, she's asking, would the power to remove unaccompanied asylum-seeking children be used? And, quote, how decisions will be made about which children will be housed in home office rent accommodation while awaiting transfer. So this is just this woman who is concerned with child welfare in this country, and that's her job.
I've seen people talking about this and saying that actually the government is... It's very difficult. The government has attempted genuinely to exempt children from the harsh penalties which are going to be inflicted on Albanian gang runners and so on when they try and come over with genuine refugees. But this will create, of course, incentives which might work against them. I mean, that's always the trouble. If you try and...
An incentive to take some children with you on the small boat.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you go, you know, you can get 10 grand, you get in the dinghy, 15 grand, and we'll throw in a youngster.
Sure enough.
That will ease your passage.
Very, very hard to say, isn't it? Very, very hard to discern from all the figures that you read what percentage of people coming over on the small boats are authentic asylum seekers.
I mean, it does. The reality that I think most people, probably most GB News viewers at any rate, will recognise is whenever you see photographic evidence of these boats landing on the shore, they do seem to be predominantly what are often referred to as fighting-age men.
All the statistics
I do not see a lot of underage children
between May and September
or women
last
of any
year, 46% were Albanian, and of course that is designated as safe country, so there's no way in the world that they're legitimately
unquestionably being run for gang purposes, aren't they?
And 90% were male. Now, a very substantial number of those coming over on small boats are clearly people, males between the age of 20 and 40, attempting to enter the country illegally in order to take part in criminal activity. What percentage? I don't know.
But sizable. Anyway, to end this section, the Daily Star, Roger.
The Daily Star, what's this one? Bear Grylls, let's eat more nuts. This is Bear Grylls, who's made the completely reasonable observation that we should be eating animal hearts, lungs and testicles if we want to live a healthy life.
Oh, he doesn't mean nuts, he means...
offal, really.
Yeah.
I think it's offal as far as I can see.
Very good.
Well, a former generation used to eat the whole beast and it makes sense entirely. We throw away so much, it's disgusting.
Italians eat the whole thing.
Yes, and so we should.
When you're in Brazil, you say to my husband's mother, we're hungry, she just rips off a chicken's head, makes the whole... everybody go, they win, so then they eat all of it.
Boil the hooves as well for
all
stock.
Of it, yeah.
Leopold Bloom, the hero of Ulysses, Joyce's Ulysses, that's how he's introduced as a man who likes, and he gives a long list of all the unpleasant parts of animals in particular, and the fake tang of urine in particular. That,
yes, absolutely.
But yeah, very, very good for you. Lots of unique nutritional values.
Absolutely.
Pig's knuckles are delicious.
But I will also say, I like nuts as well. So I don't want nuts. Yeah, actual nuts.
Nuts are frighteningly expensive.
And they're
love nuts.
And they're draining the planet of water. Also, they're bad for you, just so you know.
Nuts?
Yes.
Nuts, nonsense.
They're bad for you.
No,
right,
nonsense.
Time
they
for a
tear your
commercial break. That is the front pages, gentlemen. That is the front pages explored. Coming up after the break, we've got China hurting our feelings, why drug addicts shouldn't get a cold, and it's 2008 all over again. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway, Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Freaking me. And welcome back to Headliners with me, Simon Evans. Joining me tonight are excellent comedians Scott Capurro and Roger Monkhouse. So we will start our internal investigations with Wednesday's Telegraph. Scott, looks like the SNP loves migrants, just as long as they stay in England.
They do. They're not pulling their weight on migrants, as Kensington offers more hotel spaces than all of Scotland. The party, SNP, by the way, has provided hotel spaces for just 500 migrants compared with 600 currently being housed in top London borough hotels.
So 500 migrants in the whole... These are illegal immigrants again.
Yes.
The ones who arrive at that.
Well, asylum applicants, I suppose.
Yeah.
The thing is that
the same people we were talking about previously. You know.
But the Scottish are up to their earlobes with Ukrainians and Syrians. That's the thing. They did their part.
Up to their earlobes.
That. Yeah, they've got so many of those.
Also, in fairness, this is party politicking, isn't it? This is Robert Jenrick at the dispatch box. And in actual fact, it's the Home Office that decides where the asylum seekers are dispersed to.
Right.
So
it's
really,
up to them to give some more to Scotland.
It's up entirely within the remit.
That is a very long...
Well,
I mean, they have a population roughly 5 million in Scotland, isn't it? Mostly distributed between...
And a lot of space.
And the Scottish are expensive anyway. They cost a lot of money.
But you have 500 people in 5 million. That is a very low proportion.
Yeah.
Maybe they're holding it back as the final penalty, the threat of sending them to Scotland as a deterrent.
Yes.
Maybe the migrants prefer Kensington because the museums are better and they stay open longer. You know, the Scottish tend to close their museums at funny times.
Well, compared to, I can't remember the African kingdom to which it was being proposed. Rwanda, of course, Rwanda,
yeah.
Do you think Scotland might be sort of neck and neck with Rwanda?
Maybe. I think Rwanda's warmer and they have better farm opportunities.
Yeah. They could find... I mean, they could start inhabiting some of those islands off the coast of the Hebrides, Jura.
I wouldn't mind. It's
some
really
of those
nice.
are distinctly underpopulated.
My friend owns a condo down there. She does all right.
Yeah.
There's
a lot of lovely
It's
Airbnbs.
fabulously beautiful and wild, of course, and the reason why it's unpopulated or relatively depopulated compared to the rest of the British Isles is because it's in large part uninhabitable.
Yeah, there is that. Let's go to Wednesday's Mirror, Roger. This is a sorry tale.
Oh, this is a grim story. This is the woman in Barrow-in-Furness who has faked various incidents and made outrageous claims of rape and being trafficked and abused, partly by supposed Muslim gangs. And partly by others as well. She's abused. She's faked her own injuries.
Caught on
she's been locked up.
CCTV buying the hammer
at Tesco.
That was a. I mean, that's a fairly fundamental.
She hit herself
error,
with a hammer. Yeah,
but we're caught on camera all the time, aren't we?
Yeah, but you can lay your hands on a hammer, aren't? No, that shouldn't be. That's trivialising it. But it did just strike me as a bizarre detail. But anyway, I suppose
this is, I suppose, though, an illustration, is it not, of why it's ultimately wrong to simply take alleged victims of all crimes, rape. And all hate crimes as well at face value. You can't necessarily assume good faith, can you?
And it takes so much more time and effort to untangle these things once they can be done so quickly and easily, and so many emotions can be aroused. And these chaps, they say their lives were ruined. It sounds perfectly plausible.
And
One
it's
of them
terrible
was
too.
suicidal.
It might discourage women in the future from reporting rape and abuse.
Of course that will happen.
Exactly.
Of course that will happen. And she is directly responsible for that.
Gone to prison
Stories
for 8
like
years.
this have
But 8 years is,
effect.
I mean, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's a hefty sentence,
When you're that
isn't
age,
it? Yeah.
you're young, and it's
For
terrible.
what sounds kind of a little bit like really excessive, spiralling, like attention.
Fantasy that's run away with
Yeah, but
it.
it led to 3 men attempting suicide. It destroyed their lives.
Oh, it's
One
vile.
guy lost his business. One of the men was chased down the street, harassed, had things thrown at him.
And yet you can imagine a fantasist telling a lie and the whole thing spiralling out of control, can't you? And lie upon lie compounds the situation.
The way comedians talk about their performances in Australia during the festivals, right?
Telegraph now, Roger. China mocking Britain's relationship with America and Australia.
This is, of course, the brokered AUKUS deal between Australia, the UK and the United States concerning nuclear submarines and their supply to Australia. And China is understandably, I suppose, dissing us. And
sees this as inevitable decline following Brexit.
That's right, yes, that's right. Well, they've learnt, haven't they, and this is from the Putin playbook, to play to the liberal intelligentsia and the anxieties of the chattering classes in this country by mentioning Brexit as often as possible. But this, of course, follows the integrated review where Rishi Sunak defined China as being an epoch-defining challenge to international order. He didn't call them a threat. He held back from calling them a threat. And interestingly, some Tory backbenchers think that that's not enough.
Right. So
Ian Duncan Smith is
he's got to raise the temperature a little bit more, in fact, with China.
Absolutely. Well, of course, as far as he's concerned, there's
doesn't
no point
matter, though, really,
angering.
I suppose, does it, what the rhetoric is, as long as the agreements that have been made between the various countries
I think it matters more to Tory backbenchers than to anyone else what the rhetoric is.
What do you think, Scott?
Well, the Chinese have threatened. They said that the US and the UK are planning a time bomb that they're going to regret in the future if they go through this deal. So I think that what the Chinese are afraid of, as always, is Taiwan. It's close to Australia. Obviously, they don't want any nuclear subs hanging around.
China undoubtedly have ambitions in that part of the world across the Pacific, which we should be concerned.
But Taiwan is a national pride thing, and they're not going to let go.
Not sure a nuclear submarine is necessarily the best deterrent. Well, I suppose it's a part of the package.
I think it's the best we've got.
And also, is this an agreement that will get us into a future war 100,000 miles away from where we live?
Only if you go 4 times around the planet first, but still. Daily Mail now, Roger. Someone has found a way to bring their computer to the swimming pool.
This
is great. I love this story.
This is a wholly positive story, isn't it? This is the tiny computer server the size of a washing machine that's being used to heat a public swimming pool in Devon. This is essentially this is a very modern spin on the age-old potential of all industry and the excess heat that it produces to benefit society. And I always remember from the 1970s in Soviet Eastern Europe, you would have factories, and the excess heat from the factories would heat the village or the town.
Well, it's funny,
and it always seemed a rather wonderful thing.
If you go to Reykjavik, which Iceland is famous for its outdoor spas and its bubbling sort of sulphurous fumes and so on, but their most famous and popular outdoor bathing facility is actually a cooling water for a power station.
Right.
You know, and they all just go and lounge about in it.
I really like the story, though, because apparently since 2019, we've lost 60 public pools in the UK. And a lot of the reason pools are closing because they can't afford to heat the water and they can't afford to keep...
Especially over the last 18 months, heating bills for businesses have gone through the roof, much more than for domestic users.
Right. So this might mean we can save some pools. You know?
So
we're so lucky in London.
Every time you download porn, you're helping to heat the local pool.
That'll be like...
I'll remind my husband
6 months from now, it'll be a story about verrucas. You wait. Scott, over to Wednesday's Telegraph for more Chardon Floyd, some very wealthy people experiencing the downsides of their canny investing.
The entire US banking system is on its way down, apparently. Chaos has emerged because this bank, this Silicon Valley Bank, tried to sell some of its bonds it bought about 10 years ago, and the bond said the interest rates had gone so far up that they were losing money. And when people that had rather large investments in those banks, savings of over $250,000, a lot of people went to get that money out. And the US government stepped in and said, wait a minute, we'll cover the money you've lost up to $250,000. And people were up in arms that owned Facebook and Instagram. So Biden stepped in and said, you know what, we'll cover all of it. So they're trying to stop a recession.
Trying to stop a bank run, but I've seen people saying that there was never going to be a bank run because this was such a singular case, because it was these huge investments. Well, because, no, I mean, the vast majority of banks, 250,000, which would be, you know, the standard amount of cover, would be more than adequate. No, most people don't have more than $250,000 just sitting in the bank.
In Silicon Valley, they do.
But they did exactly there. That's the way. It was a very singular situation. And they successfully launched a propaganda campaign very quickly to say, oh, you better bail us out completely, otherwise people will lose confidence in their... It's like, no, they would... The vast majority of banks and people with bank accounts would have been covered by the statute.
But people themselves are dumb enough to lose confidence and not read the fine print in the Wall Street Journal.
There is a vague fear that this is the start of 2008 all over again, though, isn't there? That it starts in one sector and then there's contagion.
We have to see whether it's rotten beneath the surface. That's the question, isn't it?
It's rising interest rates which are catching people out all over the world.
Well, people are thinking now that the banks will lower interest rates or stop rising them because of something like this happening. But I think the opposite will be true. I think the federal economy chieftains in the U.S. will try to cover themselves, and they'll kick interest rates up a little bit higher.
Wow.
I do.
I mean, there was no problem with interest rates per se in 2008. That wasn't the issue. I don't think that's the issue with this run.
But the government doesn't want people selling bonds, so they're going to if they kick interest rates up, people will stop doing it.
But they have inflation to deal with as well, and they were formally intending to use interest rates to suppress inflation. But now they're frightened to raise interest rates, so you might get a situation where you have stagflation. Inflation continues and isn't controlled.
Without growth.
At the same time, no growth.
Well, that's to look forward to. Part 2 is over. Coming up, Trump's back, litter snitties, and why Tokyo is the best place to lose your wallet. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it. Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
And welcome back to Headliner. Straight into Wednesday's Telegraph now. Roger, everyone's favourite mad uncle, has heard about critical race theory.
Donald Trump has told voters in Iowa that he will ban critical race theory being taught in US schools. The former president says he will bring back common sense, as well as stopping trans women competing in girls' sports. He's the great campaigner. He's back. He's very good at this sort of thing. And he's throwing meat and drink to his base, obviously.
Red meat, they call it, don't they? But does it not feel a little bit like 6 months ago? This was bigger then. In Florida, it flared up, where his main rival for the nomination, DeSantis, is very popular. It just feels to me slightly like he's just repeating very obvious... right-wing.
I want to keep men out of women's sport and all that stuff he keeps saying.
Yeah, that's kind of happened, hasn't it?
But his numbers
have been dealt with. A year ago, I would have said that was probably, I would bring that up,
His ratings have fallen amongst self-identified Republicans from 91 to 80%. It's still quite high, but it's falling. And I think that he's seeing a diminution.
Yeah.
Wow, that's what it is. Diminution. And I think that also he's worried that even though he's gone back on Twitter, nobody seems to really care.
Oh, is he back on Twitter?
Yeah.
I don't know that he is.
Oh,
he's not using it. No, he's been given his account.
His account has been re-established, but apparently he hasn't yet tweeted.
Yeah, he's remained on his own private, that's right.
He doesn't seem to be able to cause any sort of whirlwind of controversy.
But he categorically shouldn't be underestimated, He's far ahead of DeSantis as a potential Republican candidate among Republican voters. And apparently, we were saying this in the interval, apparently he leads Biden by 4 points. In a potential runoff against Biden.
But quite remarkable. They will weaponise
DeSantis hasn't announced
January thing as well so much.
They will. DeSantis hasn't announced his running for president yet, I don't think. No. And also, Biden's he's going to be unlikely this time in his presidency in his third year. He's going to be very unpopular.
A bank crash could destroy his chances, of course.
We must move on, gentlemen. The rugby news now, Scott, in The Guardian. Period concerns lead to a kit change. I'm assuming that's a larger bus.
Why do I get this story? Why do I get the period story? The Ireland women's team, they've decided to wear navy shorts in this year's Six Nations, becoming the first home nations team to announce a change from their traditional white shorts over period concerns. So yes, they're worried about staining, so they're going to wear blue shorts. And apparently, in November, Wimbledon announced it too will drop the tournament's strict all-white dress code and allow all female players to wear dark undershorts.
All female players?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant
players.
rather than sort of those who are part female. But you mean
allowing all any female player who'd like to.
Yeah. Have they previously had to wear all white? Have they?
Yes, they have. It's traditional.
Yeah.
But no more. Because I I guess the women were nervous. The
It seems
athletes
reasonable,
themselves.
doesn't it?
Sure, why
I
not?
just don't know how they've managed to get away with it until now. It seems, I don't know. Presumably there were other methods used.
The media's been discreet enough not to highlight moments where
the media would have done, but you know, unpleasant trolls would have spotted it if there were any evidence. I mean, they shared Gary Lineker having an awkward moment off the side of the pitch 40 years ago.
That was hot. They show that maybe they saw that awkward episode of the new Sex and the City series where Charlotte has a moment in her white trousers where she embarrasses herself.
Roller
less
roller
inclined.
skates is all you need.
I'd be less inclined to face off against the scrum half, not knowing whether she was menstruating or not, though.
Wow,
see, that's the
you
thing.
Probably pick up on that fairly early on.
Yeah.
Little out news now in the Mail, and I, for one, cannot wait to earn my Boy Scout snitching badge.
Well, this is an argument on Good Morning Britain, where the Clean Up Britain founder has compared snitching on people who litter to reporting a stabbing or a mugging in a heated debate. You see, I'm a libertarian by instinct, and I passionately oppose the police state in all its manifestations, but I'm completely on board with this. Litter disgusts me, and I think £1,000 fine is too little. I think all...
what about tasing? Citizens tasing?
Tasers at least, and also perhaps prison. All sorts of penalties could be used.
They should be euthanized, really.
They talk extensively about the national highways being a disgrace. I couldn't agree more. It's absolutely obscene, the motorways. And I'm told it's dangerous to pick up litter on the side of motorways. We have the biggest prison population in Western Europe.
Get them
and
working.
if ever there's an opportunity to deploy them productively.
Or 3-year-olds.
Surely.
They're little. They fit on the side of the freeway. You know, the thing is, I see young people, young parents throwing rubbish out in Stoke Newington, just tossing things on the street on the Sunday, and I think, what about your kids? What about their future? Why do I care so much? I can't stand children, and yet I care about this.
It's not just the unsightliness itself, it's the signalling of stupidity, isn't it? It's the signalling of indifference to other people.
But lack of social responsibility. I'm reminded of the zero tolerance thing from the Blair years. It does work, you know, when you show pride in your neighbourhood and there aren't broken windows and there isn't litter, then you deter crime in all its manifestations.
It reminds people that didn't want to wear masks during the pandemic. It's like, what about the society?
What about graffiti? Where would you stand on that? Because I think of it as a very similar thing. I know some graffiti is like county lines or whatever. It's actually
art.
Genuinely part of... Well, no, I mean, the county line stuff it's tagging for, you know, drug dealing purposes and so on. So that's a different... But just people...
Oh, is that what happens? Is it a marker? You know what? How ridiculous. I'd never realised that it was a marker.
But I think the two things go very much hand in hand. As soon as you start seeing graffiti go up in a neighbourhood, I think the litter increases and vice versa.
Well, Banksy is graffiti. It's worth quite a lot, isn't it?
Well, you can usually tell whether something has got any artistic aspiration or is intended
that's subjective, of course, isn't it? And that's where the problem lies.
That's an age thing.
No, you can't. You can tell. Well, you would just say, is it GCSE grade 3 or above? Staying with littering news now, Scott. The Japanese have got a much more generous approach.
They're amazing, as always. Honest Tokyoites have handed in £25 million in lost cash over the last year. A total of 3.71 million items are handed in, including more than 300,000 wallets and purses. Someone handed in a box to the police, the Metropolitan Police Department, with £227,000 of cash in it.
That's amazing.
Maybe they were afraid of it.
And did it get picked up? We don't know.
Didn't say.
You've got to say that Japan is an extraordinarily high-trust society for whatever reason.
Street crime is very low there, very low.
It's utterly conformist as a society, of course. It goes down to their very marrow.
You're going to paint this as a sort of failing of imagination.
Well, they never produced the Beatles, did they? You know, culturally, there is a cost to such conformity.
Yeah, they've made some good movies. I mean, I think what it is, too, is in Tokyo, at least, it's a very populous area, and people have learned to get along. I think one way is to just kind of create your own private space. I've worked in Tokyo, and when you go into their tube and you see all those people coming toward you, at first you're a bit thrown off, and then you realize it all sort of works.
Yeah, right. Unlike ours. Well. I'm not sure about Tokyoites, looking at that headline. That's my main issue. I don't think that's the correct...
Oh, really?
I don't like it. Tokyoite.
I read it originally as honest Trotskyites.
Yeah, I think Tokyovians.
Apparently, though, there's been a rush in house burglary there recently, and it turned out to be a group of people who've just been
Albanian
let out of prison. No, from the Philippines, but it was being run by a couple of expat Japanese people who've since been brought back to Japan are going to face some pretty serious criminal charges.
That sounds like a great thriller plot. Roger,
It does, yeah.
Strange fetish news now. Young people who've grown up with the cheapest, most efficient music delivery systems ever conceived
are
wasting
missing
money
the
now.
intervention of
Ridiculous.
fluff.
Oh, God.
This is the return of the record. Vinyl sales have outstripped CDs for the first time in 35 years. I'm baffled by this. This makes me think of hipsters cycling around on penny farthings. It's just bizarre.
Who buys CDs anymore?
It would be well, CDs are
but
joyless.
not you. I buy them very cheap from charity shops because everyone's getting rid of them.
But if you stream, everything is basically free. CDs are unlovable things. They always were from the get-go. As soon as the case gets cracked or whatever, they look dismal.
Yeah.
Vinyl does have a slightly sort of artisan vibe about it. It may be
the physical reality of it is, of course, quite exhilarating.
The crackle, the miracle of the needle picking up an untraceable.
Of course, being from that generation, I'm gutted because I gave away boxes and boxes of vinyl, which I now suspect would have been worth quite a lot of money if I'd simply had the storage to hang on to it for 30 years.
Or would at least have stopped my daughter going out and spending 18 quid for a new one.
Wow!
But newly mixed music sounds so much better than vinyl, though. God, when they reproduce it, I mean,
Well, the thing about vinyl, some people go there where they like the analogue sound, but it's all mixed in digital anyway, and then transferred into analogue in order to get it back on there.
But streamed stuff loses something, doesn't it? Because are the files not compacted and you lose some
If you can
quality?
pick it up, good luck to you. I cannot tell the difference, I'll be honest with you. With my 57-year-old ears, quite happy with the convenience. I have CDs at home that I own and still listen to. I stream them just because it's so much easier. I can put them on with my phone, So I've made my vote.
No, Streisand sounds great at 9 a.m.
Yeah. That's it for this section. Coming up in the final part, we've got an Ugly Duchess, a painting that is. Why, if you want a girlfriend, you need to order a cheeseburger, not just a regular burger, and a unique way to never forget your club card. I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. So, Scott, fine arts now. This week's brazen publicity gathering revisionism rings more true.
Well, first, can I ask, can we say transvestite? Can we say that word? Is that all right?
I assume so.
All right. Well, apparently, an Ugly Duchess painting it turns out to be a man as the model. A forthcoming exhibition suggests Quentin Massey's An Old Woman, hanging in London's National Gallery, may actually be a male transvestite.
Have
or
you
just
ever
a guy
seen
in a
it before?
dress.
Have you visited?
No, I haven't seen it.
There it is. A very famous painting. I've seen it.
Oh, I've seen that, actually.
Oh, yes,
Everyone
absolutely.
always... I'm sure I'm not the first person to say so. It is clearly Norman Tebbit, isn't it?
A lot of people thought that she had some sort of disease called Paget's disease, where parts of your face become deformed, but apparently, no, it's not that. It's an enlarged jawbone because it's a guy.
Because it's quite easy, without being unnecessarily cruel, it is not difficult for an accomplished painter to do a painting, a portrait of a deluded old lady who believes herself to still be attractive and alluring, but is in fact not so, without her looking so obviously masculine.
I think
you know what I mean? That's not a picture. That is not a painting, to my mind, of a mutton dressed as lamb. It's quite...
It's a satirical painting, obviously.
Yeah, but it's satirising... The theory used to be that it was satirising a woman who was past her best but refused to accept that.
Right.
And it is in a pair with you can see the other one that she's opposite, who is her husband, who is apparently not always exhibited next door to her, but was done at the same time.
Or maybe it's actually him, her in normal dress.
Well, but no, they don't look quite. But she just looks so absurdly masculine. It's only because she has the big boobs. Otherwise, you would immediately go, that's not just a woman in drag. It's like a mockery of drag.
Did you say that big boobs make her look masculine as well? Is that
no? That's the thing that throws you off the idea. Otherwise, it would be obvious if you were.
Some people just do they not, look masculine. It just...
I've never seen a woman look remotely that masculine. Not in that particular way. I've seen women with like a strong jaw or whatever, but not... I mean, I don't know, it's hard to express.
So are you suggesting this is plausibly a transvestite? Or,
I think it absolutely is that,
You think, OK, so it couldn't just be a very, very unflattering portrait? Or indeed, perhaps a true
If you were going to do an unflattering portrait of an old woman to satirise the things that we've discussed, I just don't think that's what you do,
Well, they're going to reunite it with the old man painting you described in a dip ditch.
But it is revisionist, though, isn't it? And you do wonder whether the subject might be just baffled by our contemporary obsession imposing itself upon their
you've got to drive football.
But as couples get older, men and women start to look the same.
No.
Gender sort of goes away.
Your wife starts to look like a golden retriever.
All right.
Roger.
You're not going to be greeted well at the door tonight when you return home.
Young romance news now, and yet another example of a date-shaming exercise gone wrong.
Well, that's exactly it, isn't it? It's a date-shaming exercise on TikTok. I'm not sure this justifies the phrase news story at all. This is a woman who went on a bad date, apparently, and has posted it on TikTok. This is Daphne Diamant. Daphne Diamant.
Diamante, actually.
Oh, is it Diamant? Oh, right.
Diamant.
Daphne Diamant. Anyway, she sounds like a character from Guys and Dolls.
She does.
And she has complained about her date who took her to a burger bar and then refused to pay the extra $3 to have cheese on his burger.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, though, I've been on dates with my wife where I inquire as to the price of things and then refuse, and I can see she looks at me in a certain way. She's disappointed,
Maybe it's because she knows you talk about older women looking like dogs. But there's also... I love how this article says she's from Daphne Diamant from New York, America, which is so...
Oh, New York, America.
From Mirror to say. But
now it makes sense.
But I have been on dates, right, where I've discouraged the person I was dating, sitting across from me at a table, from ordering dessert or an appetizer because they're too expensive.
I think if you're setting up home with, it depends what age you're at. If you're just going out, for a big, of course it's nice.
I think it's kind of a turn on for somebody to be reasonable like that.
Absolutely agree.
I grew.
Got Drosophila news now, and it sounds like there might be some upsides to pollution after all.
There is. Apparently, mating of fruit flies has been reduced because the planet's getting warmer. And the fruit flies, because of the ozone levels, the fruit flies cannot smell each other as well.
Yeah, it's air pollution. It's not global warming, it's air pollution.
Well, yeah,
it smells, Well,
but I mean, the global warming is, they say, partially because of the pollution in the air. But anyway,
Drosophila,
yes.
you're
right.
I remember O-level biology, fruit flies were used in order to, where you could conduct experiments in real time about genetic traits being transmitted because they produce offspring, young, so quickly that you could do it on Tuesday and by Thursday you'd have a whole new... Apparently, if they were able to eat everything, the entire organic matter of the planet would be Drosophila within the space of about a year.
Wow. Well, we're not going to be able to do that now because of the ozone layer.
I think if any species needed having its brakes applied...
You know, we are all just wild animals sniffing around one another, and that's what the little flies are.
This is much more likely to do with...
Like golden retrievers, like sheep. I did a TV show for a competitive network about the truth about gay animals, where I just interviewed all these doctors and scientists from around the world, and animals choose each other by smell.
Yeah, and I've always said that. I have a long routine about how I find pedigree dog breeding rather disagreeable when you think about it. It's basically racism, isn't it? There's no...
A former partner of mine is convinced that we mess up so badly nowadays because we hide our own scents with expensive perfume.
If you ever smell... I remember that when I was younger, if you got a smell of what somebody actually smelled like, you could immediately tell whether you were genuinely attracted to them or not in a much more powerful,
and whether genetically
way.
you should be attracted to them or not.
There's a list of smells that I enjoy that I'm not even eager to share.
Mirror now, Roger. Good news for sex robots that want to stave off age-related cognitive decline.
This is tonight's Chat GPT story,
right?
And Chat GPT has been invited to invent a sequel to Sudoku, and has done so.
Yeah.
I don't know how playable the game is. I don't know whether
nice
we
name. I like the
alarmed.
name. What was it called? Sumplete.
Sumplete. Yes, that's right. The initial version was called Sum Delete Puzzle, and then it became Sumplete, which is all right. And that was a name invented by ChatGPT itself.
So basically, it's taken this Sudoku sort of theme. You've got boxes with numbers in, but you have to actually do sums rather than just insert
Sounds
numbers.
like a bit of a rip-off of Sudoku, but there you go.
Yeah. Well, chess was a bit of a rip-off of drafts, I expect, at one point.
That's true.
It'll never catch on. Do you do any of that nonsense?
I used to do Sudoku a lot, but I don't do any of it now. I can barely keep on my social media reading.
Quite surprisingly boring, Sudoku. After you've learned how to complete the grid, I find it's not as satisfying as a crossword, for instance.
I really like New York Times crossword.
There's nothing. I think that is the God's game, to be honest, especially with the English language, which is so well suited to it. Sudoku seems, I don't know, it's not quite the right way of thinking about numbers.
I presume they have crosswords in other languages, but I've never ever
But the
attempted one.
ambivalence, the ambiguities, the ironies, the synonyms and homonyms and so on, the echoes.
That uniquely lends itself to cryptic clues.
I believe so. That is my theory. We've got one last story to fit in, Scott. This is a bloke's groceries that cost him an arm, if not a leg.
Yes, well, he tattooed his Tesco club card into his arm. He's a super fan of Tesco. And Dean Mayhew, 31, said he got the QR code permanently inked on his arm so he could just go and do that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it saved him 18 pounds over a year.
I think Tesco should fill in with the remaining costs, don't you think?
Give a free banana or something for it,
He could have tripled that, though, going to Pizza Express.
Ideally, you would have it on your forehead, though, wouldn't you? So the girl at the till would, I say girl at the till,
It's dystopian, isn't it? People are queuing up to do this, and it's like carrying phones. We voluntarily
I'm worried that Dean has too much time on his hand, to be honest with you.
He's got something on his arm and time on his hands, The show is nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Wednesday's front pages before we go. The Daily Mail, free preschool childcare in back-to-work budget. Whether you like it or not, The Guardian, hunts £4 billion childcare bid to get parents back to work, whether you like it or not. The Telegraph, Hunt faces revolt over tax rise in budget. They like it not. The Times, more free childcare to get parents back to jobs. Bear Grylls, eat more nuts. He actually means offal kidneys, liver, etc. And that is all for our show tonight. Thank you to our guests, Scott Capurro and Roger Monkhouse. I'll be back with headliners tomorrow 11 with Paul Cox and Nick Dixon. If you're watching the 5 a.m. repeat, stay tuned for The Breakfast Show coming up just after the break. Meanwhile, if you're watching tonight, sleep well. Good night.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Good evening. The AUKUS deal has been struck between America, Australia and the UK. We're going to give them new nuclear submarines to replace the rubbishy old diesel French ones. Does this mean with Brexit that the UK is once again a world player? We're going to look at HS2, which is now becoming the most enormous white elephant. I'll ask the question, why can't we just stop it? It's far too painful. Ian Duncan-Smith comes to join me to talk about China. Where does Rishi Sunak really stand? Because I'm terribly confused. And joining me on Talking Pints, the one-time wonder kid of the darts world who stormed to victory from nowhere, Keith Deller, former world champion, joins us. But before all of that, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you and good evening to you. The top story tonight. A woman has been sentenced to 8.5 years in prison for perverting the course of justice after falsely accusing a number of men of rape. 22-year-old Eleanor Williams had also created a Facebook post alleging she'd been the victim of an Asian grooming gang. Preston Crown Court heard how 3 of the men she'd falsely accused of rape had attempted to take their own lives. And at the time of her accusations, there were mass protests in her hometown in Cumbria, with some businesses forced to close. Williams will serve half the sentence in prison. In other news today, the Chancellor is looking at increasing the lifetime pension allowance in an attempt to reverse the current trend of going for early retirement. It's understood Jeremy Hunt's considering allowing individuals to put more money into their pension pot before they're taxed. The current lifetime allowance stands at just over £1 million, with savers incurring tax after the personal threshold has been exceeded. Well, the measures are expected to be unveiled in tomorrow's budget as the Chancellor looks to increase Britain's workforce to help stimulate the economy. Full coverage on GB News tomorrow. Now, the US military has said tonight a Russian fighter jet has collided with a US military drone over the Black Sea, forcing the US to bring down its unmanned aircraft. It says the US Reaper drone was on a routine surveillance mission in international airspace when 2 Russian jets tried to intercept it. According to the US military, the incident resulted in the complete loss of the US drone, with the White House saying the incident was unsafe, unprofessional and reckless. Now, controversial social media personality Andrew Tate has had his bail request denied by a court in Romania. Tate and his brother Tristan are being held over alleged sex trafficking in the country, which is under criminal investigation. It now means he'll remain in custody until at least March the 29th. The pair were taken into custody in December but haven't yet been formally charged. And lastly, the Queen Consort met a young ballet dancer today who's set to star in a new Disney documentary. Camilla met Anthony Madu when she visited Elmhurst Ballet School in Birmingham. The 13-year-old Nigerian received a scholarship from the school after a video of him pirouetting in the rain went viral in 2020. Now Disney is making a documentary about his life. The Queen Consort wished the young star the best of luck. On TV, DAB, digital radio, tune in and online, this is GB News, the People's Channel. Time for Farage.
Good evening. Well, we can trace it all back to 1956. Now, I'm not joking. It was the Suez Crisis of 1956 when we attempted to take back the Suez Canal. The Parachute Regiment, the Royal Marines were in, but the Americans didn't support us on that one. The pound went into freefall. Pressure came on the Prime Minister, Anthony Eden, who was forced to resign. Britain was humiliated on the world stage in a way that had never happened in modern times. And that led to a change of thinking in the Foreign Office and the upper echelons of British society. And simply it was this: the age of empire was over. Macmillan came in as Prime Minister, gave his winds of change speech. And Macmillan, the Foreign Office, the aristocracy decided that our future was now to be with Europe. And indeed, in 1961, we lodged the first application to join the common market. It all goes back to Suez. And ever since 1956, we have withdrawn progressively east of Suez to the level at which the UK simply wasn't playing a role. Indeed, we even turned our backs horrendously on Australia, New Zealand, and many, many of our friends in this pursuit for being part of a new European political empire. But with Brexit, I think all of that has changed. And I may have railed on this programme about the British government since 2019 not taking the full benefits of Brexit. But on the world stage, I'll tell you something, we're standing taller than we were. You see, Australia, who became very much more dependent upon China for trade as a direct result of us leaving them behind and going into what became the European Union. Australia were also the first country to realise the serious potential threat that China posed. And that threat isn't just economic. That threat clearly, increasingly, is military as well, as China starts to build bases on sea atolls and directly threatens Taiwan. Now, to protect Australia, they've been using diesel, French-made diesel submarines, and this has suited French contractors beautifully. The problem is they are as good as useless in the modern world because they have to surface at least once every 48 hours or nearer once every 24 hours for oxygen and for air, whereas a nuclear-powered submarine can stay submerged for up to 4 months at a time undetected by China or any other potential enemy. So the AUKUS deal has been struck, and yesterday in San Diego, President Biden, Prime Minister Albanese and Rishi Sunak were there together, basically signing on the dotted line. What does it mean? It means that we're going to provide Australia with new nuclear-powered submarines. Rolls-Royce, yes, a British company, will build those small nuclear reactors that go into them. As for construction, some of it will be done in Australia, some of it will be done in America, some of it done, particularly components, in the United Kingdom. And in the meantime, America, more than us because they're stronger, will start to provide nuclear submarine support for Australia. It's an attempt to rebalance power in the Far East. And we are now playing a very leading role in that. As members of the European Union, it would never have happened. Tonight, I want to debate, do you agree with me that the United Kingdom is now beginning to become a world player once again? Let me know your thoughts. Farage@gbnews.uk. Well, I'm going to go now to Australia. I know it's an ungodly hour of the morning, and I'm very grateful to Alexandra Marshall, the online editor of The Spectator Australia, for getting up in the middle of the night and speaking to me.